many South Africans, Durbanville immediately means Sauvignon Blanc, and for many of those people it means Durbanville Hills Sauvignon Blanc, one of the more iconic white wines we have in South Africa. But interestingly, it is not a Durbanville Hills Sauvignon Blanc that was my first encounter with the valley. In fact, it wasn't even a white wine. It was this, the calligraphy red out of an estate called Nitida. And the fact that I've got it, that I'm drinking it, is something of a miracle, because Bernhard, when you first began this misadventure in wine, you had no money, you didn't know how to make wine, and you still decided this was a good idea.
Yep, absolutely. And Dan, the joy about that is that when you start doing things more on a hobby level, and you're not trying to do rands and cents calculations, and you don't have to pay for the bills at the end of the day, it's much easier to take those risks. And I mean, I did the first probably 5 harvests while I was still fully employed in a corporate environment. And I used to take a day's leave and a week's leave and go make wine, and another week's leave to plant vineyards, and that's how we got going.
What was that very first wine like? What was the response to it? Did anybody die trying to drink it?
Well, Alan Mullins picked up on it, and he's been a great protagonist for a long while. And then we arrived at the Veritas show in 1996 and got a double gold for it. That was a very auspicious
pretty good start.
Yeah, so that helped us a lot to get the brand onto the market and get everybody recognizing it.
And was this just passion? Was this just a dream of being a winemaker?
I had quite a substantial collection of wine in Johannesburg, which I brought down. So my father taught me to drink wine, and I just loved making wine. And I started, when I first moved onto the farm, I made a barrel with Jackie down at Bloemendal, and that got the whole sort of making side of things going, and yeah, it was just a fun thing to do.
If we look back to lockdown, most South Africans taught themselves to make pineapple beer and banana bread. These are things you can Google and do relatively easier. Yeah. Making a wine is slightly more complicated. How did that process work?
You know, I come from an engineering background, and I think that a lot of things in life is all about being consistent and doing things properly. And I think a lot of winemaking is about that. I think one has to have a passion, one has to have I always talk about winemaking is like painting a picture. You have to have an understanding of what the inks are doing, but after that is artistry. And the same goes for wine. You have to have a basic understanding of the chemistry, but if you're an artist and you've got the passion for it, it'll come out the other side. And you must listen to people. As
you stand here today, could you ever have imagined 35 years back that this is what you might have ended up with?
There's no ways you could do that. And if you start something as a hobby, which is what I did in the first couple of years, and then eventually it becomes your business and you grow the business to where it is at the moment, 2 restaurants on the farm, we're on the point of launching a hotel. It's just one of those things that progresses as you go along, and life takes you there. Has it done well for me? It's done fantastically well for me. You know, how do you measure life? And the joy of living on a farm and being able to put food on the table for the family every day, I think is often sufficient in terms of all those debates and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Well, I think you've just measured life rather effectively, really. My only real surprise is that this place is still standing, because over the 2 pairs of broad shoulders in shot is what is not a designer artisanal feature. That's actually, you just couldn't be bothered to build a wall, and that's the soil of the estate.
When we built this cellar originally, the wall probably stood here, and I watched that wall for 15 years, and it was completely stable. Then we expanded it. We decided to make this into a feature. So that's the soil of the farm as it stands. So you can see, if you look carefully, you can see the claw marks of the digger loader as he was working there.
Well, that combination of a sense of adventure and engineering at heart is shown not just here with your rather unique feature, but I also spotted something in the cellar I'd like to go and have a look at, because this is you in your Professor Brainstorm mode, coming up with something to get out of one of the chores of winemaking.
And the hard chores of winemaking.
Well, I won't spoil it, so let's head over to the cellar and find out what, after 9 glasses of wine at 2 in the morning, our winemaker here came up with. But as we head over, cheers, Bernhard, and well done. It's a wonderful story, and it's so cool hanging out. The very first glass of wine I had from the Durbanville Valley was the Nitida calligraphy. It is still drinking beautifully today, and part of that perhaps is because of this contraption. One of the elements of winemaking that winemakers look forward to least is the punch down. and that is what inspired this particular contraption.
Yeah. Dan, as we're saying, necessity is the father of all invention. So having sat here at 4 o'clock in the morning for far too long, punching down wines on my own, I decided I needed to develop something. And it's, as I say, it's a pneumatic cylinder with a blade at the bottom. The key to the blade at the bottom is that it swivels, so it'll flatten out to punch the skins down, but as it comes up again, it falls over, and that pushes the blade around, so it moves around on its own. But it's
this is genius.
It's an absolute lifesaver. There's no question about it.
I think Helgaard's probably the happiest winemaker in all of South Africa.
Yeah, completely. But you know, again, we're just talking about winemakers. You get some winemakers that embrace what you do and some that don't. Helgaard's got it going again. My previous winemaker didn't get it going, so it's one of those things that happens in life. But yeah, it's an absolute joy.
Well, the Helgaard in question is the winemaker here at Nitida. I'm going to go and learn about some Sauvignon Blanc, and while I do that, I'm quite intrigued because you said you've got something rather cool you're going to try and set up for me. All right, I've got no idea what is happening, but there is a smile on Bernhard's face and a glint in his eye. I reckon it's pretty cool, and I tell you what, if it's anything as cool as this, we're in for a treat. Welcome to Nitida, and welcome to the office of Helgaard, which is an office in full sway at the moment, because on the outside you have this calm, cool, icy demeanour. Inside, I know it's absolute chaos, because we are in probably the single busiest week of harvest, and as much as you're being very polite and hosting us inside, you are definitely wishing we were somewhere else this particular week.
Like I'm inside is a bit of a rage, but it's fine. I'm like a wine fly in a glass of wine, just kicking around trying to stay afloat. But yeah, we're right in the middle of it. I've just crossed over the halfway mark. I've just finished the tsunami that is Sauvignon Blanc. I've now just finished Sem, so I'm now starting to go into my red varietals, which in theory means it should calm down a little bit, but Mother Nature has this tendency to tell you to hold her beer, and then she throws you a curveball.
When you come into harvest, there are certain things that you'll already have a handle on. You kind of know how much you're going to get because at this stage you know where the harvest is. You know historically what a certain style is from a particular block. But then there are those things that you don't have a handle on, that as you brought the grapes in, you're starting to go, oh, hang on, how much of that element is there? How much do you have to be thinking on your feet as the harvest is unfolding?
It's a constant, I always say I have to be fluid, because when you work with a fluid, so it's sort of in theme. But it all comes down to, you have a really good idea of what's happening. I already, in August of each year, I already start planning for the following year. But then it's vintage. I mean, I know that I want to make a tropical fruit style Sauvignon Blanc, and then I get a cool year, and suddenly I have to start pivoting in how I bring those grapes into my cellar, temperatures I fermented it. This is constant change.
How quickly do you start to get a sense of vintage in the cellar and what you may or may not need to do?
It's relatively quickly, actually. A lot of times it's within the first, for Sauvignon Blanc, it's within the first week or so I already have a really good idea. I normally will already have an indication beforehand, because we walk consistently through the vineyards, tasting all of the grapes at various stages. But then once it comes into the cellar, I very quickly see, after that first, second fermentation is done, I already have a really good idea of, like, this is my season. So this is how I already have to, I'm not going to say manipulate, but this is how I have to play with what I have to adjust my winemaking style.
We are surrounded by tens of thousands of litres of wine, and a lot of that is Sauvignon Blanc. We are in the Durbanville Valley. It is what we've come to expect. Am I able to sample what we have now and get a sense of how this process is unfolding?
Sure, now you're putting a lot of pressure on me. Yes. So this is probably, I'm going to let you taste my wild child, just because this harvest feels a little bit more on the wild side. I'll explain more in depth when we taste the finished product, but what I'll do is I'll let you taste one component of it. So just to give you an overall aspect of what I do with my Sauvignon Blancs is, This year I used about 11 to 12 different yeasts on Sauvignon Blanc. It's about 20 different batches of Sauvignon Blanc I've made, and all of that is, I make about 5 to 6 different Sauvignon Blancs, and I want to showcase different typicities of Sauvignon Blancs.
It's a little bit more than just let's squash a grape, let's put it in a bottle and sell it to somebody.
I sometimes try that, but
all right, well, let's try this.
expect a crystal clear Sauvignon Blanc, wrong time of the year.
But right now, this is a protein shake.
Yeah.
You're trying this every morning. This is why you have this chiseled athletic figure. You've got protein shakes for breakfast every day. This is a great idea.
And a bit of alcohol kick in it, so it helps make the day go a bit quicker.
So when I look at this, just at the very first visual, this is somewhere between unrefined apple juice and the person who washed these glasses left some sunlight in it.
Some muck in it,
and it's come through. But as we know, the protein is in there. In terms of the flavour profile, how far down the road are we at this stage?
So at this stage, we are pretty much where the wine is going to be. It's still a little bit reserved. So when you start off and you add your juice, it smells like grape juice. And then about 2-3 days after you've added the yeast, a tank really starts blossoming and it becomes super tropical. Like some mornings we walk into the cellar and it's like someone has been crushing grapefruit.
It is amazing. You can tell it is very much the unfinished product,
Yeah.
but already the grenadilla's leaping through and little tropical notes that are waving at you and smiling, and it's a fascinating process. And as the dad of all of these kids in your cellar, watching that unfold, watching them develop, must be such an exciting part of what you do.
So my wife always tells me, it's like, you have such an awesome job, even though at 5 in the morning you don't always appreciate it as such. But it is fantastic to see how you go from a grape hanging in a vineyard to something that brings joy to people, hopefully joy to people.
Well, this is the work in progress. Hargaard is surrounded by litres of Sauvignon Blanc that in due course will become something magical in a bottle. So let's fast forward and find out how this becomes the Sauvignon Blanc with which we're a little more familiar. The Sauvignon Blanc which we tasted in the cellar, moved forward in time, is now the Sauvignon Blanc in glass. But before we drink the wine, Helgard, it's got a bit of competition, because that view out across, I'm seeing Robben Island, I'm looking at Table Mountain, we've got the valley behind us. It's an enchanting part of the world.
And it's also a surprising part of the world, because when you drive this road, you don't see it. You have to sort of come into the farms, walk into the vineyards, and then suddenly this whole view opens up. And part of the magic with that view as well is, with Robben Island, we get this nice cool northwesterly sea breeze coming in, mostly in the winter. Then summer months from the False Bay area, which is behind us that way, we get it southeasterly. And we generally here about 4 in the afternoon, you start feeling the temperature just dropping as that cool sea breeze starts coming in. And that's what makes Sauvignon Blanc in this valley so magical, really. You get a bit more greener, but then also a lot of tropical flavors.
So yes, the views are great, but that's purely a bonus.
Yeah.
There actually is a very functional element to this aesthetic, and it's allowing you to make the style of wine that you do.
Exactly, yeah. So with Sauvignon Blanc, you can do it in warmer areas. You just express a lot more tropical thiol kind of flavors. With this cooler sea breeze, we just build a different aspect of Sauvignon Blanc. Just make it, we can go super green if we wanted to, but generally these days we try and balance it out a bit more, greener flavors with tropical flavors. And Durbanville, yes, we have the cool sea breeze, but also you can feel today it's a warm day. We're going up to about 35. You still get some heat in here, you get some nice ripeness, and you get some nice riper flavors as well.
And we are in Sauvignon Blanc territory right now. This is one of the Sauvignon Blanc vineyards.
Yeah. So the tank, incidentally, that you tasted in the cellar came from this block behind us. So this is one of our young blocks, block 5 Sauvignon Blanc. This was also harvested first, so that gave me a bit more greener flavors, also because we're slightly higher up, so we get more of that sea breeze. And that's what I sort of do with my Sauvignon Blanc. I pick over about 20 to 30 different days, different times, and all of that allows me to have these different aspects of Sauvignon Blanc, different levels of ripeness, gives me different flavor.
This is wine that would have been the previous process. Yes. This is your 2024. Take me from what I was drinking in the cellar, and obviously they are different vintages, but it's very similar in terms of the wine that will be produced. Yeah. What has taken place from there to hear.
So just before we get to that bit, just very quickly, this is called the wild child, and it's not just because we're sometimes a bit wild on the farm. It is also because I use a wild yeast. So during this time of the year, I take about 100-200 liters of juice, and I place it in these big open bins right underneath the vineyard. And all I'm doing there is trying to get the natural yeast that you'll find in this vineyard to inoculate, sort of like, think of a mother culture. Start when you do sourdough, just to start your mother culture going. And then that fermenting juice is added to clean juice. So that, where you've tasted in a cellar, that process has already happened. From there to here, I have a second component to this wine, which is barrel fermentation. So you didn't see it, but there was about 20 barrels that's slowly fermenting. That gives me my wooded style, and I keep it separate for 6 months. So that tank stays as it is for 6 months. It will naturally just start to clarify as well. The barrels will age a little bit for the next 6 months, and then I'll just blend the two components. Bit of oak, but I don't want butteriness. I want mouthfeel, roundness on the wine.
The most striking element for me on this wine is not the mouthfeel to it or the flavour profile to it, but the fact that it is from 2024, because it tastes like it must be a couple of years older in terms of the sense of development you get.
Yeah, and that's all the barrel aspect of it. So the steel tank, that's fresh. There's not much I can do about that, but with the barrels, I do once a month stirring up of the lees. I also use very specific yeast on my barrels. So yes, this is wild fermented, but that's the steel component. Barrels are a bit expensive, so you don't always want to risk it with wild yeast. So there I use a yeast that we call it autolysis. So the yeast cell pops open at the end of its life, and that releases a lot of manoproteins, a lot of creamy texture to the wine, and that gives you that sense of aging on a wine without losing freshness.
It feels right now that we should be lighting a fire, having a braai, kicking back, and given the ocean, maybe a crayfish braai would go rather nicely, but we can't because your junior assistant winemaker Bernhard has got something for me. I don't know what we're going to be doing, but apparently this is seriously cool. So rather reluctantly, I'm going to say goodbye to this amazing vineyard and this beautiful view. I'm going to hang on to the wine because it's lovely, but go and find out exactly what Bernhard has got in store. And so to the big reveal. Bernhard, you've had me very intrigued. You've promised me something seriously cool that I probably haven't done before. So why are we here? What are we doing?
Well, I've got a bunch of guys here who are enthusiastic about cannons and preserving cannons and looking after the history of cannons, and they've got what they call the Nitida cannon station up here, where they actually live fire some of their guns.
So this is old school artillery, not modern Japanese cameras.
These are old cannons. These are cannons that in some instances are 300-400 years old. They're all originals. There's no replicas here. Some of them they own themselves. Some of them belong to the city of Cape Town. Some of them belong to the Navy. So they accumulate them and put them together and just have fun with cannons. And it's just wonderful because to see that sort of enthusiasm around is just amazing.
So why are they here? Why are they at Nitida?
And I've always believed that if you're a landowner, it is always lovely to be able to share that land with other people that use it respectfully, and that gets back to the mountain bike club and things like that as well, who use your land respectfully. It's a joy to have them around, and it's like a joy having these guys around. I mean, they come and do their thing and they have fun with their cannons, and it gives me some joy. It brings some attention to the farm as well, which also helps build the brand a bit. So it's just a generally a fun thing to do. I get nothing out of it other than the joy.
You've sparked some joy in me as a school kid inside. Do I get to fire one of these cannons?
You are fortunate enough that you're going to be firing one. And that is, believe it or not, an amazing experience.
Today was already looking pretty cool, tasting wine and visiting Nitida. Now I'm getting to fire a cannon. I am seriously excited. Eric, tell me a bit about this collection of cannons.
This is the largest live open-air cannon museum in Africa.
That's phenomenal. So all of these are still functional?
They're all functional, they're all original.
As I look at these, they're all headed out towards a highway not far away. So when we fire this, do we just have to wait for the cars to go past?
If you see the distance here, this one can fire, not this one, only 700 meters. So we will have to change the angle, yeah?
I've done many things on visit to wine estates around the world. I've never fired a cannon. I'm very excited. What is the advice you should give me as a novice cannon firer beginning my new career?
Well, let's see if you survive it, then we can.
Talk about round two.
Now, round two. It's a new industry. I mean, Bernhard has fired, but I would say most people come here has never seen a cannon being fired or fired himself.
Right. I'm very excited. I used to have a little Playmobil cannon that I fired from a boat when I was a kid. This is slightly bigger and a lot more impressive. So let's fire a cannon if we can.
This is the charge. Okay, we're gonna charge the gun now. One hand always on the barrel to get the static away. And once it's down there, now the gun is alive.
All right.
Okay, the charge is in. We're gonna ram it to compact it down there. There we go.
All right.
Now you must only use one hand, and this is not a joke,
Yep.
because if something happens, you're only going to lose one hand. Now we're going to prick a hole into that charge. Okay, we drop this on top of the charge.
So that's gone through the foil and into the powder.
Correct. You can let by. This is a replica of what we used back in the days. So stand closer.
Okay, let's do the
Yep.
practice.
There we go, nice.
It's like a Roger Federer forehand, really.
Yes, yes. Are there any questions?
Right.
No? Are there any questions?
No, I'm picturing myself 400 years ago. The fate of the Cape Province is in my hands, and I'm defending us. And I'm going to say it's probably Australians invading. So I've got them lined up. I'm picturing an entire Australian rugby team on a boat, and that's what I'm aiming for. Does that sound about right?
Cool.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
We're going to count him down. Wait, let me just get out of the way, yeah? Wait, I'll just nurse this thing a bit.
Eric, you don't feel very confident about what I'm about to do.
Just don't lean forward, because I don't know how up to date the medical aid kit here is in the
All
restaurant.
right.
Don't lean forward.
I won't lean forward. I promise.
Can, are you ready?
I'm ready.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire! Is that what you call stand still? Then, congratulations. You have successfully fired your first cannon.
Thank you very much, Eric. That was brilliant.
De
Loved
nada.
it.
De nada.
So there we go. I was expecting great things in Nitida. I wasn't expecting that. I'm now not only an even better master of Sauvignon Blanc and the reds of the Durbanville Valley, but thanks to Eric and his son Jörg, I am now a master cannon firer. And next time South Africa gets invaded by Malawi, I'm there for the team. Thank you.
Congrats.